Sofia Delgado's hands shake as she carries the tray toward table 1. The private family table every other waitress on staff has warned her never to approach carelessly. "Whatever you do," Marge had whispered to her 20 minutes earlier, eyes darting nervously toward the corner booth. "Don't look at the girl too long. Don't ask her questions. And whatever happens, never, ever use her real name." "Her real name?" Sofia had asked, confused. "Isn't it Vivian?" "Officially, yes," Marge said, voice dropping even lower. "Just call her Miss Kane. That's all you need to know." Sofia didn't understand the warning then. She's about to understand it now. She approaches the table where Nikolai Kane sits reviewing papers with the cold, controlled focus of a man who built an empire most people are too terrified to even discuss by name. Across from him, his daughter picks at a plate of untouched pasta, shoulders curled inward, eyes fixed somewhere distant that has nothing to do with the restaurant around her. The girl looks maybe 16, painfully thin, dressed in expensive clothes that somehow make her look smaller instead of more put together. "Good evening," Sofia says, setting down water glasses carefully. "Can I get you anything else?" Nikolai barely glances up, waving a dismissive hand that clearly means no. But Sofia's eyes linger on the girl a moment longer than they should, taking in the hollow, exhausted expression, the way her fork just pushes food around without ever actually lifting any to her mouth. Something about that particular kind of sadness feels instantly, painfully familiar to Sofia. She recognizes it from her own reflection most mornings. "You look sad today, Mara," Sofia says softly without thinking, the words slipping out before she fully registers she said them at all. The entire restaurant seems to freeze in the same instant. Silverware stops clinking. Conversations at nearby tables die mid-sentence. Even the soft background music seems to fade into nothing. Vivian's fork clatters against her plate, her whole body going rigid. Nikolai's head snaps up, papers forgotten entirely, his eyes locking onto Sofia with an intensity that makes her stomach drop instantly. "What did you just say?" he says, voice deadly quiet. Sofia's breath catches, panic flooding through her as she registers every horrified glance from her co-workers across the room, Marge's face gone completely white near the kitchen doorway. "I'm sorry," Sofia stammers. "I didn't mean." "Where did you hear that name?" Nikolai demands, rising slowly from his chair, every inch of him radiating barely controlled fury. Sofia's hands tremble at her sides, certain she's about to lose the job she started only 3 hours ago, the job standing between her and complete homelessness. "I don't know," she whispers, voice shaking. "I just looked at her and it felt right. I'm sorry, I'll go, I didn't mean any harm." A sound interrupts her apology. Not anger. Not another demand. A sob. Vivian's composure shatters completely, tears streaming fast and sudden down her face, her whole body shaking with the force of emotion she's clearly been holding back for longer than anyone at this table realizes. "Nobody's called me that," Vivian chokes out, voice breaking, "in 3 years." Nikolai's fury freezes instantly, replaced by something far more complicated, something raw and unguarded, crossing his usually controlled expression. "Vivian," he says softly, reaching toward his daughter. "Don't," Vivian says, pulling back sharply, tears still streaming. "Don't call me that. Not right now." He said Mara. She said the name Mom actually gave me. The restaurant remains frozen, every employee watching this scene unfold with a mixture of terror and disbelief, certain they're witnessing something that's never happened before in this room. Sofia stands motionless, tray still in her trembling hands, completely lost as to what she's just triggered. "I don't understand," she whispers. "I didn't know. I'm so sorry, I didn't know that name meant something." Nikolai turns toward her slowly, expression unreadable, something dangerous and complicated flickering behind his controlled eyes. "Sit down," he says finally, voice quiet but absolute. "Sir." "Sit down," he repeats. "Both of you need to hear something I should have explained a very long time ago." Sofia lowers herself carefully into the empty chair beside the table, heart pounding, completely unaware that the accidental use of a single forbidden name has just cracked open 3 years of buried grief neither Nikolai nor Vivian have ever properly faced together. She has no idea that this ordinary Tuesday evening shift is about to become the moment everything changes for this fractured, grieving family, Or that she's about to become the unlikely bridge between a father too broken to speak his daughter's true name and a girl who's been starving for connection nobody else in this restaurant ever thought to offer her. Sofia Delgado arrived in this city 4 days ago with a single suitcase and exactly 2 months' worth of rent saved from 3 years of working double shifts back home. She's 23 years old, the kind of exhausted that comes from constantly calculating how far every dollar needs to stretch. And this job at the Kane family's private restaurant felt like a genuine miracle when the manager called to offer it that morning. "Just don't make waves," the manager had told her during training, voice tight with warning. "Serve the family table carefully, follow every instruction exactly, and you'll do fine here." Sofia had nodded, desperate to keep this position, having no idea she was about to break the single most important rule within her first shift. Now, sitting beside a table she was warned never to approach carelessly, she watches Nikolai Kane's expression shift through something she can't quite name, grief and fury and disbelief all colliding at once. 3 years ago, Nikolai begins, voice rough, unfamiliar with vulnerability. "My wife died. Cancer. Fast and cruel and completely unfair." Vivian's shoulders shake with quiet sobs beside him, but she doesn't interrupt, doesn't look away. "Her name was Elena," Nikolai continues. "And the last thing she ever said to me in that hospital room was to make sure Vivian never forgot who she really was." "Mara," Sofia whispers, understanding beginning to dawn slowly. "Mara," Nikolai confirms, voice breaking slightly. It was the name Elena called from the moment she was born. A family name, passed down from Elena's grandmother. Vivian was always her legal name for documents for the outside world. But at home she was always only Mara. Sofia's chest tightens, watching Vivian wipe tears from her face with trembling hands. "After Elena died," Nikolai continues, voice growing quieter, "I couldn't hear that name without falling apart completely. I forbade everyone in this house, this restaurant, this entire organization from ever speaking it again." "You forbade it," Vivian says, voice sharp despite her tears, "without ever asking me if I wanted that too." Nikolai's jaw tightens, old guilt visibly surfacing. "I was trying to protect you. Protect both of us." "You were protecting yourself," Vivian counters, voice breaking. "I lost Mom too, Dad. But I also lost the only name she ever actually called me. You took that from me too, on top of everything else." Sofia sits frozen, witnessing something achingly personal unfold in front of her, uncertain whether she should even still be present for it. "I should probably go," she says softly, beginning to rise. "This is clearly a private family matter." "Stay," Vivian says quickly, voice unexpectedly firm. "Please. You're the first person in 3 years who's actually looked at me and said my real name without flinching." Sofia settles back into her chair, uncertain but moved by the raw desperation in the girl's voice. "I didn't know," Sofia admits quietly. "I promise you I had no idea what that name meant to your family." "That's exactly why it mattered," Vivian says, voice thick with emotion. "Everyone else here is too terrified of my father to ever say anything unscripted around me. You just looked at me like an actual person and said what you saw." Nikolai watches this exchange with something complicated crossing his controlled features, old grief and reluctant recognition warring visibly. "What did you see?" he asks Sofia quietly, genuine curiosity replacing his earlier fury. Sofia hesitates, unsure how honest she should be with a man capable of ending her employment or worse with a single word. "I saw someone who looked exactly like I feel most mornings," Sofia admits finally, voice careful but honest. "Like she's disappearing a little more every single day, and nobody around her seems to notice or care enough to say anything." Vivian's breath catches sharply at that, tears welling fresh in her eyes. "That's exactly it," she whispers. "That's exactly how it feels." Nikolai's expression shifts further, something raw and uncomfortable settling behind his guarded eyes as he studies his daughter properly, perhaps for the first time in longer than he wants to admit. "I didn't realize," he says quietly, voice rough. "I didn't realize how much I'd let my own grief overshadow yours." "You never asked," Vivian says softly, though less sharply now, exhaustion replacing some of her earlier anger. "You just decided how we'd both grieve and expected me to follow along silently." The restaurant around them slowly resumes its normal rhythm, though every employee within sight continues stealing curious, nervous glances toward the family table. "I need to think about what this means," Nikolai says finally, standing slowly, voice still rough with unfamiliar emotion. Sofia, is it? Yes, sir. Don't apologize again, he says, something almost gentle in his tone despite its underlying weight. You didn't do anything wrong tonight. You did something nobody else in this restaurant has been brave enough to do in 3 years. He walks away toward his private office, leaving Vivian and Sofia alone at the table, the weight of everything just revealed settling heavy in the air between them. Thank you, Vivian whispers, once her father is out of earshot. For seeing me. For actually seeing me. Sofia doesn't yet know that this single accidental moment of kindness is about to pull her directly into the middle of a fractured family's deepest wound, or that Nikolai Kane's mysterious rule about her daughter's name hides a secret far darker than simple grief, one that's about to put both Sofia and Vivian in serious danger. Sofia doesn't sleep well that night, replaying the strange emotional scene over and over in her small borrowed room above a laundromat 2 blocks from the restaurant. She arrives early for her next shift, uncertain whether she'll even still have a job after everything that unfolded, but Marge intercepts her the moment she steps through the back entrance. Mr. Kane wants you assigned permanently to the family table, Marge says, voice tight with barely concealed shock. Effective immediately. Sofia's stomach drops. I thought I'd be fired. So did everyone else, Marge admits, glancing around nervously before lowering her voice further. Sofia, I need to tell you something, and I need you to be careful about how you use it. What is it? The reason we're all so terrified around Vivian, Marge says quietly, it's not just about the name thing. There's more to it. Sofia's brow furrows. What do you mean? 3 years ago, right before Elena Kane died, Marge continues, voice barely above a whisper, there was an incident. A waitress named Carmen used to work the family table, back when Elena was still alive and things felt different around here. What happened to her? Carmen overheard something, Marge says, glancing nervously toward the kitchen doorway. A conversation between Nikolai and one of his associates about a rival family, about something that happened to Elena that wasn't just cancer. Sofia's breath catches sharp. What are you saying? I don't know the full story, Marge admits. Nobody does. Carmen disappeared the same week Elena died. Some people say she was fired. Others say something worse happened. Sofia's hands tremble slightly, processing this new, unsettling layer to everything she witnessed the previous evening. You're saying Elena's death wasn't just illness, Sofia whispers. I'm saying, Marge says carefully, that people around here learned very quickly not to ask questions and not to get too close to that family. Whatever you triggered last night, Sofia, you need to be careful. Mr. Kane isn't just grieving. He's guarding something. Sofia carries this unsettling information with her throughout her shift, watching Nikolai Kane with new wary attention as she serves the family table that evening. Vivian seems different tonight, less guarded, occasionally offering small genuine smiles as Sofia refills her water glass or checks on her meal. Did my father seem strange to you yesterday? Vivian asks quietly, once Nikolai steps away briefly to take a phone call. Besides the obvious, I mean. Sofia hesitates, uncertain how much to share. Strange how? He's been different since Mom died, Vivian admits. More paranoid. More controlling. I always assumed it was just grief, but sometimes I wonder if there's something else going on that he's never actually told me. Sofia's chest tightens, Marge's warning echoing uncomfortably in her mind. What do you mean? Sofia asks carefully. There was a waitress, Vivian says, voice dropping lower, glancing toward the kitchen to ensure they're not overheard. Carmen. She used to work at our table back when Mom was still alive. She was kind to me, actually talked to me like a real person, not just staff serving the Mafia Boss's daughter. Sofia's breath catches. What happened to her? She just disappeared, Vivian says, frustration and old grief evident in her voice. One day she was here, the next day my father told me she'd found a different job elsewhere. But something about how he said it never felt honest. Nikolai returns to the table before Sofia can respond, expression tight, phone still clutched in his hand. Everything all right, sir? Sofia asks carefully, watching his controlled composure crack slightly at the edges. Business matter, he says curtly, though something in his tense jaw suggests otherwise. Nothing that concerns either of you. Vivian and Sofia exchange a brief, knowing glance, both clearly sensing there's far more happening beneath the surface than Nikolai is willing to acknowledge. Later that evening, after her shift ends, Sofia finds herself lingering near the restaurant's back exit, curiosity and unease warring inside her. She overhears two of Nikolai's security men speaking quietly near the loading dock, voices low but audible in the quiet evening air. "The Moretti situation is escalating again," one man says. "Boss thinks they might be circling back around, same as before Elena died." "You think it's connected?" the other asks. "What happened to her?" "I think the boss has never stopped believing that," the first man says grimly. "And now that the kid's finally using her real name again, drawing attention back to the family, he's worried it's making them all more visible again." Sofia's blood runs cold, pieces suddenly connecting with sickening clarity. Elena Kane's death might not have been a simple illness after all. And Sofia's innocent accidental use of Vivian's real name last night might have inadvertently drawn dangerous attention back toward a family that's been hiding from something far more sinister than mafia gossip. She thinks of Vivian's hopeful, grateful smile earlier that evening, of the fragile trust beginning to form between them. She has no idea that her simple act of kindness has potentially placed both herself and Vivian directly in the path of a danger that's been quietly circling this family for 3 long years. To understand why Nikolai Kane forbade an entire restaurant from speaking his daughter's true name, you have to understand exactly what happened during Elena Kane's final months. Elena wasn't just Nikolai's wife. She was the one person who ever made him believe the empire he'd built could coexist with genuine tenderness, genuine softness, without one destroying the other completely. They met when Nikolai was 26, already deep into his organization's hierarchy, already carrying the particular weight of violence and power that most people in his world eventually let harden them completely. Elena refused to let that happen. "You're allowed to be soft with the people who matter," she told him once, early in their relationship, watching him struggle to hold his newborn daughter with the same careful precision he brought to everything else in his life. "Power doesn't require you to be cold all the time, Nikolai." He believed her, slowly, over years of watching her navigate his dangerous world with grace and warmth that never once curdled into the fear most people around him carried. Vivian was born into that fragile balance, raised by a mother determined to give her genuine softness despite her father's dangerous profession, and a father slowly, carefully learning tenderness he never expected to be capable of. Mara, Elena called her from birth, a name passed down through 3 generations of her own family, carrying weight and history that felt entirely separate from the Kane name and everything dangerous attached to it. "She needs a name that's just hers," Elena told Nikolai once, rocking their newborn daughter gently. "Something that belongs to our family, not to your empire." Nikolai agreed easily then, unable to imagine a future where that simple, loving choice would eventually become a source of unbearable grief. Elena's diagnosis came when Vivian was 13. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer discovered far too late for meaningful intervention, a devastating verdict that shattered the careful balance Elena had spent years building. "We'll fight this," Nikolai told her, voice fierce with a determination that had never once failed him in any other area of his life. "Whatever it takes, Elena. Whatever it costs." But cancer doesn't respond to power or fear the way Nikolai's enemies always had. It simply progressed, relentless and indifferent to everything he was otherwise capable of controlling. During those final months, something else began happening simultaneously, something Nikolai has never fully explained to Vivian, something that still haunts him every single day. A rival family, the Morettis, sensed weakness in Nikolai's distraction, began testing boundaries, probing for vulnerabilities while his attention remained consumed by his dying wife. "They're circling," his head of security warned him repeatedly during those final weeks. "Boss, you need to focus. This distraction is going to cost you everything you've built." Nikolai refused to leave Elena's side, choosing his dying wife over his empire's stability, a choice that nearly cost him everything eventually. 3 weeks before Elena passed, a car alongside her medical transport was run off the road. An incident officially recorded as a random accident but one Nikolai has always privately believed was a deliberate message from the Morettis. Elena survived that incident barely, her already fragile body further weakened by the trauma, her remaining time cut shorter by complications that followed. "Promise me something," Elena whispered to Nikolai during one of her final lucid moments, voice barely audible through pain medication and exhaustion. "Promise me you'll keep Mara safe." Not Vivian, the Mafia Boss's daughter. Mara, my daughter's safe. I promise, Nikolai told her, voice breaking completely for one of the only times in his adult life. I promise, Elena. I promise. I promise. Elena died 4 days later, and Nikolai's grief immediately curdled into something darker, more paranoid, absolutely convinced that the name Mara had somehow made his daughter more visible, more vulnerable to the same danger that had accelerated Elena's death. Nobody uses that name anymore, he announced to his entire staff within a week of Elena's funeral, voice hollow with grief and fear intertwined. She's Vivian now. Only Vivian. That name dies with her mother. He believed, in his grief-stricken logic, that erasing the name would somehow erase the vulnerability, and would keep his daughter safer from enemies who might exploit any perceived weakness or sentiment. He never considered, in the depths of his own devastating grief, exactly what that erasure would cost his daughter emotionally. Vivian, only 13 at the time, lost her mother and her true name within the same devastating week, forced to become Vivian Kane, the Mafia Boss's daughter, instead of Mara, Elena's beloved girl. I didn't understand why he took it from me, Vivian told Sofia recently, voice thick with old, unresolved grief. I thought maybe he just couldn't bear to hear it. I never realized he thought he was protecting me. Carmen, the waitress Marge mentioned, discovered the truth about the Moretti connection to Elena's accident during those final weeks, overhearing a conversation she wasn't meant to hear between Nikolai and his security team. Nikolai, in the depths of grief and paranoia, made the difficult decision to quietly relocate her to a different city entirely, providing significant compensation for her silence, terrified that any leaked information about the Moretti threat might endanger Vivian further. He never told anyone, including Vivian, the full truth about what actually happened to Carmen, allowing suspicion and rumor to fill the silence instead, an oversight that's haunted him privately ever since. I made so many mistakes trying to protect her, Nikolai admits to Sofia quietly, days after the initial incident, finally opening up about details he's never shared with anyone outside his immediate security team. I thought silence and control meant safety. I never considered what it actually cost Vivian to lose both her mother and her name in the same breath. Sofia listens to this painful history with growing understanding and sympathy, beginning to comprehend the full weight of grief, guilt, and genuine danger that's been quietly suffocating this family for 3 long years. But she still doesn't know the most dangerous piece of this story. The Morettis never fully retreated after Elena's death. They've simply been waiting patiently for the right moment to resurface. And Sofia's innocent use of Vivian's true name has just given them exactly the opening they've been waiting 3 years to find. The call comes at 11 p.m., 3 days after Sofia first spoke Vivian's forbidden name, shattering the fragile peace that had slowly begun settling over the Kane household. Sofia is walking home from her shift, exhausted but content, when her phone buzzes with an unfamiliar number. Hello. Sofia Delgado? A man's voice, smooth, unfamiliar. I need you to listen very carefully. Sofia's steps slow, unease prickling immediately along her spine. Who is this? Someone who knows exactly what you triggered 3 nights ago, the voice says. Someone who's been waiting a very long time for Nikolai Kane's daughter to become visible again. Sofia's blood runs cold, footsteps freezing completely on the empty sidewalk. I don't understand, she says, voice shaking. What do you want from me? I want you to deliver a message, the voice says. Tell Nikolai Kane the Morettis remember exactly what happened 3 years ago. Tell him Mara's real name isn't the only thing that's about to resurface. The line goes dead before Sofia can respond, and she stands frozen on the sidewalk, phone still pressed against her ear, terror flooding through her entire body. She sprints the remaining 6 blocks to the restaurant, bursting through the back entrance breathless and shaking, searching desperately for anyone who can help. Where's Mr. Kane? She gasps to Marge, who's closing up the kitchen for the night. He left 20 minutes ago, Marge says, an alarm immediately crossing her face at Sofia's evident panic. Sofia, what's wrong? I need to reach him. No. It's urgent, it's about Vivian, please. Marge fumbles for her phone, dialing Nikolai's private line with shaking hands while Sofia paces anxiously, replaying the threatening call over and over in her mind. Nikolai answers within seconds, voice sharp with immediate concern at the unexpected late call. Marge? What happened? It's Sofia, Marge says, handing over the phone quickly. She says it's about Vivian. She sounds terrified. Sofia takes the phone, voice shaking as she relays the threatening call word for word, watching Marge's face pale further with each detail. Nikolai's voice, when he finally responds, carries a coldness Sofia hasn't heard from him before, controlled fury replacing his earlier grief-softened tone entirely. "Stay exactly where you are," he says. "Don't leave the restaurant. I'm sending security immediately. Mr. Kane, is Vivian safe? Is she with you right now?" A pause, heavy and terrifying, stretches across the line. "She should be home," Nikolai says, voice tightening with a fresh alarm. "She was supposed to be studying in her room." "Should be," Sofia repeats, horror creeping into her voice. "You're not certain?" Nikolai doesn't answer, already moving, Sofia hearing rushed footsteps and a car door slamming through the phone's speaker. 20 minutes later, Sofia sits in the restaurant's private office, security posted at every entrance, when her phone buzzes again with a text message from an unknown number. A photo loads slowly and Sofia's breath catches sharp in her throat. Vivian, blindfolded, hands bound, sitting in what looks like the back of a moving vehicle, clearly terrified despite her attempt to maintain composure. Beneath the photo, a single line of text: "Tell her father the Morettas are done waiting. He has until dawn." Sofia's hands shake violently as she forwards the message immediately to Nikolai, who calls back within seconds, voice raw with barely controlled panic beneath his usual controlled authority. "They have her," he says, voice breaking slightly. "They actually have her." "What do they want?" Sofia asks, voice shaking. "What does until dawn mean?" "It means they want a meeting," Nikolai says grimly. "A trade. Territory, resources, whatever concessions they've been demanding for years, in exchange for my daughter's safe return." "You're going to give it to them," Sofia says. "Whatever they want, you're going to give it to them, right?" "It's not that simple," Nikolai says, voice tight with barely restrained fury and fear intertwined. "The Morettas don't negotiate in good faith. They took Elena from me slowly through fear and pressure. I won't let them take Vivian the same way." "Then what do we do?" Sofia asks, panic evident in her voice. "We find her before dawn," Nikolai says, voice hardening with absolute resolve. "Before this becomes a negotiation, I have no way of guaranteeing she survives." Sofia arrives at Nikolai's mansion 20 minutes later, having insisted on helping despite the obvious danger, some fierce protective instinct refusing to let her simply wait passively while Vivian's life hangs in the balance. She finds Nikolai in his private study, a security team gathered around a table covered in maps and surveillance photos, tension radiating through the entire room. "The photo's background," one security member says, zooming into details on a laptop screen. "Warehouse district near the old shipping yards. We've narrowed it to 3 possible locations based on visible landmarks. Then we move on all 3 simultaneously," Nikolai says, voice absolute. "I'm not waiting for confirmation while my daughter sits blindfolded in some warehouse, terrified." Sofia watches this controlled, dangerous man transform in front of her, grief and paranoia finally channeling into decisive, focused action. "Mr. Kane," she says quietly, "can I do anything to help?" Nikolai's eyes find hers, something raw and grateful flickering behind his controlled exterior. "You already have," he says. "You gave her back her name. You reminded me what I've been failing to protect for 3 years, hiding behind rules and silence instead of actually fighting for her." His phone buzzes sharply, and his expression darkens further as he reads the incoming message. "They've moved up the timeline," he says grimly. 2 hours. Not until dawn. 2 hours or they're done negotiating entirely. Sofia's breath catches sharp, horror flooding through her at the shortened deadline. "What does that mean?" she whispers, though she already suspects the terrifying answer. Nikolai's jaw clenches hard, fury and fear colliding into something absolute and unshakable behind his controlled eyes. "It means we're out of time to plan carefully," he says. "It means I'm going after my daughter myself, right now, before the Morettas decide 2 hours means nothing at all." The warehouse sits at the edge of the shipping yards, rusted metal siding barely visible beneath a moonless sky, exactly matching the background details from Vivian's photo. Nikolai moves through the shadows with lethal precision, security team fanning out silently around the perimeter, every movement calculated and controlled despite the raw fear evident in his tightened jaw. Sofia waits in the car per Nikolai's absolute insistence, watching through the windshield as shadowy figures disappear into darkness surrounding the warehouse. Inside, Vivian sits bound to a metal chair, blindfold finally removed, eyes wide with terror as three men move around her with cold, calculating efficiency. "Your father's taking too long," one man says, checking his watch impatiently. "Maybe he doesn't value you as much as we assumed." "He's coming," Vivian says, voice shaking but defiant. "You have no idea what he's capable of when someone threatens his family." "We know exactly what he's capable of," another man says, smiling coldly. "We've been planning this for 3 years, ever since he took his wife's death out on our organization instead of accepting it was simply cancer." Vivian's breath catches. "You didn't cause her cancer?" "Cancer doesn't need help," the man says. "But your father's paranoia certainly gave us plenty of opportunities to exploit while he was too distracted grieving to properly defend his territory." Outside, Nikolai's security team confirms 3 guards posted at the warehouse's main entrance, 2 more patrolling the perimeter, standard numbers for what should be a straightforward extraction. "On my signal," Nikolai says quietly into his earpiece, voice deadly calm despite the fury and fear roiling beneath his controlled exterior. The first guard falls silently, Nikolai's men moving with practiced, brutal efficiency, clearing a path toward the warehouse's side entrance within minutes. Inside, Vivian flinches at the sudden commotion outside, hope and terror warring across her face as shouts and scuffling sounds echo from beyond the warehouse walls. "Something's happening," one of her captors says, drawing his weapon, moving toward the door cautiously. The door bursts open before he reaches it. Nikolai moves through the entrance like something unstoppable, years of controlled fury finally channeling into decisive, devastating action. His fist connects with the nearest guard's jaw before the man can even raise his weapon, the crack of impact echoing sharply through the warehouse's cavernous space. The second guard lunges and Nikolai catches his wrist mid-motion, twisting hard until the weapon clatters uselessly to the concrete floor. "Dad." Vivian's voice cuts through the chaos, relief and terror combining as she watches her father fight through the men holding her captive. The third guard raises his weapon toward Nikolai, and for one terrifying moment, everything freezes. Then Nikolai's security team bursts through the opposite entrance, and the guard's attention splits at exactly the wrong moment. Nikolai closes the distance in 2 long strides, driving his shoulder into the man's chest, sending him crashing backward into a stack of empty crates. "Don't touch my daughter," Nikolai snarls, voice raw with 15 years of controlled fury finally breaking loose completely. The guard scrambles backward, hands raised in surrender as Nikolai's security team surrounds him, weapons trained, the fight ending as quickly as it began. Nikolai crosses to Vivian immediately, hands shaking as he works quickly to untie the ropes binding her wrists. "Dad," Vivian sobs the moment her hands are free, launching herself into his arms. "But you came. You actually came." "Of course I came," Nikolai says, voice breaking completely, holding his daughter tight against his chest. "Mara, I promise you I will always come for you. Always." Vivian's whole body shakes with sobs, relief and terror finally releasing after hours of forced composure. "You said it," she whispers, disbelief evident even through her tears. "You called me Mara. I should have said it every single day for the past 3 years," Nikolai says, voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry, Mara. I'm so sorry. So sorry." Outside, Sofia watches from the car as security escorts the captured Morettas toward waiting vehicles, tension finally beginning to drain from the tense night air. Nikolai emerges from the warehouse moments later, Vivian held securely against his side, both of them visibly shaken but safe. Sofia rushes forward the moment she sees them, relief crashing over her entirely. "You're okay," she says, voice breaking with emotion. "You're actually okay." Vivian pulls away from her father slightly, reaching for Sofia's hand, gripping it tight despite everything she's just survived. "Thank you," Vivian whispers. "For calling security. For not just walking away when this got dangerous." "I couldn't just walk away," Sofia says softly. "Not after everything that's happened this week." Nikolai watches this exchange, something profound shifting behind his exhausted, relieved expression. "The Morettas are finished," he says quietly, mostly to himself. Tonight's kidnapping attempt gives us everything we need to end their organization permanently. Attempted kidnapping of a minor, tied directly to the same men involved in Elena's accident 3 years ago. You're certain? Sofia asks. One of the men we captured already started talking, Nikolai confirms grimly. The accident that weakened Elena during her final weeks. It wasn't random. It was exactly what I always suspected, and now I finally have proof. Vivian's breath catches sharp. They actually hurt Mom. Deliberately. They did, Nikolai confirms, voice hardening with fresh resolve. And they're going to answer for every single consequence of that decision starting tonight. 3 hours later, back at the mansion, Vivian sits wrapped in a blanket on the living room couch, exhaustion finally overtaking the adrenaline that carried her through the terrifying ordeal. I keep thinking about what you said, she tells her father quietly. That you should have said my real name every day for 3 years. I meant it, Nikolai says, settling beside her, voice gentle now, all earlier fury finally spent. I let my own fear and grief take something from you that should have always belonged to you. That was never fair, Mara. I'm sorry it took something this dangerous to finally understand that. Vivian leans against her father's shoulder, something healing slowly beginning between them after 3 years of careful, painful distance. I'm just glad it's finally over, she whispers. Sofia watches from the doorway, exhausted but quietly grateful, understanding that her simple accidental act of kindness 3 nights ago has somehow become the catalyst for justice this family has been waiting 3 long years to finally receive. 3 weeks later, the Kane mansion feels different, sunlight spilling through windows that somehow seem brighter than Sofia remembers from her first visit. Vivian sits at the kitchen island, homework spread across the counter, occasionally glancing up to ask her father questions about calculus problems he's clearly relearning alongside her. I don't think that's right, Dad, Vivian says, laughing softly as Nikolai frowns at a particularly complicated equation. I ran an entire criminal organization for 15 years, Nikolai says, mock offense in his voice. Surely I can handle basic trigonometry. Clearly not, Vivian teases, and the easy warmth between them feels entirely different from the careful, guarded distance Sofia witnessed during her first shift. Sofia has become a regular presence at the mansion now, no longer simply serving the family table at the restaurant, but genuinely welcomed into their slowly healing world. I still don't fully understand why you kept me around, Sofia admits one afternoon, helping Vivian sort through old photo albums Nikolai finally retrieved from storage, boxes he hadn't opened since Elena's funeral. Because you saw me, Vivian says simply. Really saw me when everyone else was too afraid to look directly at either of us. They flip through photographs together, Elena's warm smile appearing in image after image. Moments of genuine joy Sofia never expected to witness given everything she'd learned about this family's painful history. She would have liked you, Vivian says quietly, studying a photo of her mother laughing at some long-forgotten joke. Mom always said the right people find their way into your life exactly when you need them most. Sofia's eyes fill slightly, moved by the quiet trust building steadily between them. Nikolai joins them at the table, settling into the chair beside Vivian, studying the photographs with an expression softer than anything Sofia witnessed during her first week at the restaurant. I found something else in storage, he says, sliding a small box across the table toward Vivian. Your mother wanted you to have this when you were older. I should have given it to you years ago. Vivian opens the box carefully, finding a delicate silver locket inside, engraved with a single word, Mara. She had this made right after you were born, Nikolai explains, voice thick with emotion. She always said it was proof that your name mattered, regardless of anything else the world decided to call you. Vivian's hands shake as she fastens the locket around her neck, tears spilling freely despite her obvious happiness. Thank you, she whispers, for finally giving this to me. I'm sorry it took so long, Nikolai says quietly. I'm sorry for a lot of things I should have handled differently these past 3 years. The Moretti organization has been formally dismantled over the past 3 weeks, their leadership facing serious federal charges connected directly to Elena's accident and Vivian's attempted kidnapping. Justice finally happened, Nikolai told Sofia recently, voice carrying a weight of relief he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Elena finally has justice, even if it came far later than it should have. Sofia has also settled more comfortably into her new life, no longer worried about the precarious 2-month rent calculation that consumed her thoughts during her first week in the city. Nikolai quietly arranged a permanent position for her, managing the restaurant's daily operations, along with housing assistance that finally allowed her genuine stability instead of constant financial anxiety. "I don't need charity," Sofia told him initially, wary of accepting help she hadn't technically earned through the position alone. "This isn't charity," Nikolai told her firmly. "This is gratitude properly expressed. You gave my daughter back something I'd taken from her out of my own fear. That's worth more than any amount of financial compensation could properly measure." Tonight, the three of them sit together on the mansion's back terrace, watching the evening settle warm and golden across the property, an easy silence stretching comfortably between them. "I keep thinking about that first night," Sofia admits. "How terrified I was that I'd just lost my job within hours of starting it." "Instead you found an entire family," Vivian says, smiling genuinely for what feels like the first time in longer than 3 years. Nikolai watches his daughter's easy laughter, something settling warmly in his chest that he hasn't felt with this particular intensity since Elena was still alive. "I've been thinking," he says quietly, "about making your position here more permanent, Sofia. Not just at the restaurant. Here with us if you're interested." Sofia's breath catches surprise and cautious hope warring across her exhausted but genuinely happy expression. "I'd like that," she says softly. "I'd like that very much." Vivian reaches over, squeezing Sofia's hand gently, gratitude and genuine affection evident in her warming expression. "Welcome to the family," she says simply. 6 months later, the Kane mansion buzzes with warm, easy energy entirely different from the careful, grief-heavy silence that once permeated every room. Vivian, now 17, laughs freely during dinner most evenings, sharing stories about school, about friends she's finally allowed herself to properly connect with, no longer weighed down by 3 years of careful, guarded distance. The locket her mother left rests permanently against her collarbone, a visible reminder of a name and identity nobody will ever again try to take from her. Sofia has settled fully into her new life, managing not just the restaurant's daily operations but also several charitable initiatives Nikolai established in Elena's memory, providing resources for families struggling exactly the way Sofia once struggled before arriving in this city. "I want other people to find the same kind of second chance you gave me," Sofia told Nikolai when proposing the initiative, and he'd agreed without hesitation, recognizing exactly the kind of quiet, meaningful legacy Elena would have wanted built in her name. Nikolai himself has changed significantly over these past 6 months. The controlling, grief-paralyzed fear that once defined his parenting slowly replaced by genuine, present engagement with his daughter's actual life. "I used to think protecting her meant controlling everything around her," he told Sofia recently, watching Vivian laugh with friends across the restaurant's dining room. "I've learned real protection means actually being present enough to notice what she genuinely needs." Tonight, the restaurant hosts a small, private celebration for Vivian's 17th birthday, string lights glowing warm against the evening sky, laughter and easy conversation filling a space that once felt heavy with unspoken grief and fear. "I can't believe it's been 6 months, Vivian says, watching Sofia help arrange the final touches on her birthday cake. 6 months since you accidentally became my family," Sofia says, smiling warmly. "Since you accidentally saved this entire family," Vivian corrects gently. Nikolai approaches, watching the easy warmth between the two young women with an expression of genuine, unguarded happiness. "Your mother would be so proud of who you've become," he tells Vivian quietly, voice thick with emotion. "Not despite everything that happened but because of how you've healed through all of it." Vivian's eyes fill with grateful tears, though these carry none of the old, exhausted heaviness from 6 months earlier. "I couldn't have healed alone," she admits. "I needed both of you. Someone brave enough to see me and someone finally brave enough to actually let me be seen." Later that evening, as the celebration winds down, Sofia finds herself alone briefly on the restaurant's back patio, reflecting on everything that's changed since that terrifying, accidental first shift. She thinks about arriving in this city with nothing but a single suitcase and desperate hope, never imagining that one small, unplanned moment of kindness would completely transform not just her own life, but an entire grieving family's future. Nikolai joins her quietly, 2 mugs of coffee in hand, settling beside her with the easy comfort of genuine friendship built slowly over months of shared healing. I never properly thanked you, he says. For that first night. For seeing what none of us had the courage to acknowledge. You've thanked me plenty, Sofia says softly. Every single day since, honestly. Still, Nikolai says, I want you to know exactly what you gave us. Not just Vivian's name back. A chance to actually grieve together instead of separately, silently for years longer than we should have. Sofia's eyes fill slightly, moved by the genuine gratitude evident in his voice. I just said what I saw, she says quietly. I didn't expect it to matter this much. That's exactly why it did, Nikolai says. Because it was honest, unplanned, completely without agenda. Sometimes the smallest, most genuine moments end up mattering more than anything carefully planned ever could. Inside, through the restaurant's windows, Vivian's laughter drifts warm and easy across the celebration, unguarded, unafraid, exactly the way a 17-year-old girl should be able to laugh. That's the thing about being truly seen, isn't it? It rarely requires grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes it just requires someone brave enough, or perhaps simply honest enough, to say what everyone else is too afraid to acknowledge out loud. Sofia spent years believing her own struggles made her invisible to the world around her. She learned this year that sometimes the very things that make us feel most alone are exactly what allow us to recognize someone else's hidden pain, and to offer them the simple, powerful gift of finally being seen. So here's the question worth sitting with tonight. Is there someone in your own life who's been quietly disappearing, waiting for someone brave enough to finally notice? And if you were the one who'd been forgotten, silenced, or renamed by someone else's fear, would you have the courage to ask for your real name back? Tell me in the comments. Has someone ever said the exact right thing at the exact right moment, without even realizing how much it would change everything for you?